The sun had begun its slow descent over the hills of Galilee, painting the sky with warm streaks of gold and orange. The Sea of Galilee shimmered beneath the glow, calm for the moment, though everyone who lived near it knew how quickly that calm could turn into chaos. On its shoreline, a massive crowd had gathered: families, fishermen, merchants, wanderers, and the curious, each one drawn by the voice and presence of a single man, Jesus of Nazareth. They had heard whispers of his miracles, of healings, of demons cast out, of the sick restored, and the broken made whole. But it was not only his power that drew them, it was his words. Jesus spoke with an authority unlike the scribes or the teachers they were used to. His words didn't simply inform, they transformed. They reached into the deepest parts of a person and stirred something alive. This day had been long. Jesus had been teaching for hours, yet no one wanted him to stop. He had begun with parables, simple stories layered with profound truth. He spoke of seeds falling on different kinds of soil, revealing the condition of a person's heart. He described a tiny mustard seed becoming the greatest of garden plants, a picture of God's kingdom starting small but destined to change the world. He spoke of hidden treasure and priceless pearls, teaching that the kingdom of heaven was worth more than anything one could own. And the people listened, some leaning forward, some whispering to each other, others sitting in stillness as his words sank into their souls. At one point, Jesus lifted his eyes and saw the crowd growing restless with hunger. They had traveled far to hear him, and many had not eaten all day. With compassion stirring in his heart, Jesus turned to his disciples. "Give them something to eat," he said gently. The disciples looked at him in disbelief. "Lord," Philip answered, "even 8 months' wages wouldn't buy enough bread for each person to have a bite." But Jesus only smiled. "What do you have?" Andrew spoke up. "Well, there's a boy here with 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. But what is that among so many?" Jesus didn't hesitate. "Bring them to me." He told the crowd to sit down in the grassy field. Then he took the loaves and fish, looked up to heaven, and gave thanks. He broke them and handed the pieces to the disciples to distribute. And a miracle unfolded. The bread multiplied, the fish multiplied. Basket after basket was passed from hand to hand, and not a single person went hungry. In fact, they ate until they were full, and still 12 baskets of leftovers were gathered. The people erupted in amazement. Some whispered, "Surely this is the prophet." Others said, "He must be the one we've been waiting for." But Jesus sensed something deeper. They wanted to take him by force and make him king, not the kind of king he came to be. Not a political ruler, but a savior of souls. So, as evening approached, he quietly dismissed the crowd. Then he turned to his disciples and told them, "Go on ahead to the other side of the lake." They reluctantly obeyed, climbing into the boat and pushing it away from shore. Jesus, instead of joining them, climbed up a nearby hillside alone. The sky had darkened, and the first stars appeared. He knelt down on the rock, closed his eyes, and prayed. In the stillness of the night, Jesus poured out his heart to the Father, prayers of strength, purpose, love, and guidance for the mission ahead. Though fully God, he was also fully human, seeking fellowship with his Father. While he prayed, the disciples faced a very different experience. Out on the Sea of Galilee, the calm had vanished. The wind had shifted sharply, whipping across the water with force. Waves began to rise, crashing against the sides of the boat. The disciples, many of whom were seasoned fishermen, tightened the ropes and dug their oars into the water, but they weren't making progress. The wind was against them, pushing them back with every stroke. Hours passed. The night grew darker. The storm grew stronger. Peter shouted over the roar of the wind, "Keep rowing!" John called back, "We're not moving. The waves are too strong." Andrew gripped the side of the boat, squinting into the darkness. "Where is the master?" He should have been with us. They battled the storm through the night. Their clothes were soaked, their muscles burned, fatigue tightened around them like a vice. And all the while, doubt crept into their minds. Why did Jesus send us ahead? Does he know we're struggling? Are we going to survive? And then, sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning, a time the Jews called the fourth watch, something happened that none of them would ever forget. Through the mist and the crashing waves, a figure appeared. At first, it was only a silhouette, something standing upright on the water. The disciples blinked and looked again. The figure drew closer, calmly stepping atop the waves, as though they were solid ground. Terror seized them. "It's a ghost!" someone shouted. Their hearts pounded. They clung to the boat in horror. But then, a familiar voice cut through the storm, steady and strong. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Jesus, walking on the water, master over the storm, master over creation itself. Relief washed over the disciples, though their minds struggled to comprehend what their eyes were seeing. Peter, bold and impulsive as always, stood up in the rocking boat. "Lord," he called out, "if it is really you, tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus extended his hand. "Come." In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Peter climbed over the side of the boat, his foot touching the cold surface of the water. But instead of sinking, the water held him. He took a step, then another. His eyes were fixed on Jesus, a fisherman walking on the sea. The waves still crashed around him, but as long as his gaze remained on the Lord, he stood firm. Closer and closer he walked, his heart pounding with awe and faith. But then, he noticed the wind. The roar of the storm surged in his ears. His eyes shifted from Jesus to the waves towering beside him. Fear struck him, and fear, just like the waves, pulled him downward. Peter began to sink. "Lord, save me!" he cried out desperately. Immediately, Jesus reached out, grabbed his hand, and lifted him. "O you of little faith," Jesus said gently, "why did you doubt?" Together, they walked back to the boat. As soon as Jesus climbed inside, the wind died instantly. The waves calmed. The storm ceased. The disciples stared in awe. Never had they seen anything like this. Not only the miracle of walking on water, but the authority Jesus had over the storm itself. They knelt in the boat. "Truly," they whispered, "you are the Son of God." As the morning light began to break across the horizon, the boat reached the shore. People recognized Jesus immediately. Crowds gathered again, bringing the sick, the lame, the blind, anyone who needed healing. And the same hands that lifted Peter from the water now touched the broken, the hurting, the hopeless. Jesus had taught them with words earlier that day. Now he had taught them with action. Through the miracle of the bread, he showed that he provides. Through the night of the storm, he showed that he protects. Through walking on water, he showed that he is Lord over all creation. And through saving Peter, he revealed his compassion, even in our moments of fear and doubt. The disciples would remember this day for the rest of their lives. It was a day of teaching, a day of miracles, a day of revelation, a day when they saw Jesus not merely as a teacher or a prophet, but as the very Son of God walking among them.